right.
All right. And we are recording episode 2 of Scott and Dave's West Jersey Board Dads podcast YouTube channel. Insert fancy intro music that we don't have copyrights to. All
Hey, you
right.
got to
Very cool.
like we said before, you got to start somewhere, man. How you
Yeah,
doing
got to
today?
start somewhere. Hey, doing it once was quite the hill to climb. I think we're back about a month later, and we have a second episode. Um, you know, this is if we do this monthly, who knows? This could be watch out, Joe Rogan.
Look
We're
out.
we're, we're coming for the
Yeah,
number one spot.
sure. There's our competition, right? Or slash our peers. Um, yeah, man. So things are going well. Nice to spring's coming out. Good times to get together with friends. Hopefully play some games too.
Yeah, yeah. Definitely missing a little bit of that. I know, in our world, we have a tough time just getting together in general, just with our gaming group and even just you and me. Busy dads, family, kids, sports, responsibilities, that sort of thing. And I found myself in an uh, in a good way, I suppose, where we just came off vacation. I've left my previous job. I don't start my new job until next week. So I had this like week and a half of I don't have any real responsibilities other than just keep my kids alive. My wife is away for the weekend for work. So I had like a whole weekend together and I was so pumped because I'm like, hey, I can do Friday night, Saturday night, even Sunday during the day. Uh, and I won't be losing out on my wife and family time or couples time, and nobody else is available. So,
Yeah,
uh,
everyone. Yeah, yeah.
swing and a
Well,
miss.
I had a similar deal in our house, so we could each you know you know shout at each other from across the room, but
Right.
or across town, but we couldn't get
We could have
together.
reverted back to our pandemic days of you holding a camera over Agricola and we would play over Zoom, or I suppose we could play over BGA. But I think we've both determined that that just does not hold a candle to the real deal of in the same room playing with actual cardboard and cards and meeples and things. Just doesn't
That's
have
right.
the magic.
That is right. That is right. But let's talk about some games. Have you played, even if it wasn't this weekend, Scott? What have you been playing lately?
I have not played a lot recently, so I got to so a couple things. In my last week of work, I was able to play some games with some people. I think partly out of pity, but also I had cultivated over my time there a small group that would meet with me every week, and we would play games at lunch. And so I got each of the people members in that group a game, and we didn't play any of the new games. So I got one person, for instance. It's very artistic. I got her Canvas. It's just such a unique game, a unique look to it. I didn't get to play it. Got another person who had just adopted a dog, Forever Home, which is about like a dog adoption. And then I got another person who just started dating someone, Love Letter. So, I tried to do little thematic things, but we didn't get to play any of those games. We did play one of my favorite games of all time, and I think it was a fitting game because everybody loves it. We played Azul, and I also took the little mini Azul with me on our vacation and taught my brother and my nephew Azul. So that's what I've played the most of recently. And also, I think it has surpassed games like Wingspan and Castles of Burgundy as the game that I'm probably best at on a relative scale. So that's what I've played the most of recently, and I just love teaching that game just because it's so appealing to so many people. Um, Maybe not an exciting game to discuss, but it is what I've played most recently, and I do love it, no matter how many plays I have under my belt.
There's a few games that are out there in the hobby space. Azul, Splendor, maybe even Ticket to Ride, where it's a whole another ball of wax if you're just kind of tooling around with your family or some
Right.
casuals, or playing against somebody who's put in a few dozen or more games of it and
Right.
takes it seriously.
Sure.
I played with our friend down the road. This was a month or two ago, and he said I had never played with anyone other than my 12-year-old son and my wife. So he was is like, is this gonna be different? Yeah, it was a different experience.
Sure.
And it's I guess it's a testament to games like that. And you hear of every once in a while a new game like that. They're saying Harmonies kind of has a
Mm.
little of that life where it could be really pleasant and fun and casual, or it could be cutthroat and nasty even,
Yeah.
despite the
Oh,
theme that makes it think that it's really
they can be
pleasant.
very misleading.
Yeah.
Uh,
So they're especially, I mean, if you, and it's funny because it takes a different life of its own, even if it's playing 2 versus 4 players, because they're really
mm,
different. You play 4 player Zool, and it what could be a nasty move doesn't necessarily have the bite to it, because a lot of times you're not necessarily directing it at some specific, unless it's the leader. But
yeah.
it's more just like, hey, I'm going to make sure that I have the best spot, and maybe everyone else doesn't, compared to 2 players where you could just have a move where your goal is just to completely end up with 4 or 5 tiles down underneath for not only the upcoming turn, but also the next turn. I remember this one
Sure.
time I was playing a 2 player Zool game, and 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 somehow it ended up where the one player had nothing on the bottom, and then in 2 turns ended up having, I think, 6 or 7 tiles on the bottom. It's like, yeah, I'm really sorry about this. but
Yeah.
but that's the way it is. I mean, it's a different game. Of course, you do that. You might never play again, or you might have to sleep on the couch. You do that sometimes if you do it with somebody who's not necessarily used to take that type of a board game. But it is pretty cool, and it's nice to have a game that's easy to learn but has that kind of depth. And it's also nice to play a game that, like, even if that happens and you are up the creek without a paddle, it's a half-hour game, maybe a
Yeah.
40-minute game.
Yeah. It's
So
not a major commitment by any
you know
means.
it's funny you say that, and not to jump to a different game, we can always come back to it. But Scott, you and I played on BGA recently, Innovation.
Mm.
And we were learning. I was like, I'm
Yeah. Yeah.
excited to learn this game. And I did a little bit of reading of the rules, really. And I knew that it was a take that especially 2 player game where um like a lot of it is zero sum. If something happens in the game, the other person might benefit, and you um have a detriment all at the same time in the same play. I remember thinking after three turns, the first 3 turns of the game, like, this game is over. And then I was like, all right, well, how long is the game going to take? Well, Azul, it's a half hour. Innovation, not so much. I know it could have been 10. I've heard that it could be a 10-minute game. Our game was not a 10-minute game, but
I think our
at the
game took a
same
little bit
time,
longer. It took a little bit longer. I mean, we were playing synchronously, and
sure,
I think that if in person we had played that, I don't think it would have taken very long at all. Honestly,
maybe. Yeah, maybe. I don't
maybe
know.
maybe it
I've never
felt
played.
harder. Maybe it felt worse because you knew 3 turns in that you were
Yeah, well,
up a
if you
creek.
count the turns,
Yeah.
thinking about how many times I actually was my turn to play, probably between 20 and 25.
Mm.
So my thought was 10% of the game, it was over. So, like, it was like, am I going to be able to come back? And looking at the cards I was drawing, and the cards you were drawing, and the cards you were playing, and the cards that I couldn't play because if I did, they were just going to get stolen. So that was, oh boy, that was a trial by fire.
Yeah.
But I think that at the same time, you play a Zool with somebody,
Yeah.
you might get a negative score here or there, but at the same time, it doesn't have quite the same have quite the same. What's the word? What's the word I'm looking for? I think the word I'm looking for. but
Well,
it's not you don't
it's not
have
as
the
determinative in
beginners,
the.
you don't have the beginner going down the double black diamond. Let's
Yeah,
put it that
I
way.
would say that there is some rewarding qualities to Azul, even if you're getting slaughtered. There's something very satisfying in Azul of just finishing the pattern, finishing the line, seeing how the things connect. And at early stages, uh, you I will tell you in Azul, especially as you play longer, I won't say the game is over in the first or second round, but it can be. And you may not realize that as a novice player early on, but an advanced player will see like if you get denied either the first or second row in any round, but particularly in an early round, you're cooked, most likely. If you don't have the one or the two, you're done. Now, you may not realize that as a novice player because you're like, oh, I finished my 5 row, or I finished my 4 row, or I got my 3 and my 4. And you may think that you're actually doing great things, but you've screwed yourself. But playing it out is still pleasant because you're seeing progress be made. You're still finishing things, you're scoring things. You may be a mile behind in score, but even in the next round, you still have some hope to like finish something up, or maybe you can get one, finish a line in all 5 of the rows, and it can still feel satisfying. I'm not an innovation expert by any means. I think I've played maybe 5 times in my life, and I think 3 of those times were in person, and twice it was on BGA, and once was against you. Uh, and I would say, yeah, about 3 or 4 turns into it, I ended up with a combination of cards of powers that were just milking you dry while building my thing. I have not played innovation enough to say definitively that this is the case, but I will tell you sometimes the whole game can turn on one card. The powers are just so crazy that even though you may seem down and out, you may get a card that totally upends the whole game. And so I'm not saying that there was a path out for you necessarily, but in the little bit that I've played it, I will sometimes feel totally helpless. And then I get a card that negates what you were doing that was crushing me or something. And the game just evolves so rapidly on a turn that the whole thing gets turned back, and then it can turn back and forth. So I think we would enjoy it if we played a little bit more. Like, I still am not familiar with any of the cards. Every time that a card gets drawn to me, I'm reading it for the first time, kind of thing. And like, what does this do? And how would I use it? Which is fun, but it does make the game go a little longer when you have to. There's a lot of text in that game, and then the implications of that text are also can be a little tricky. So it's worth revisiting if you ever want to. I know that first taste probably was not very enjoyable, and while I felt bad doing it, I've definitely been on the other end, especially at your
Yeah,
hands.
no mercy, no mercy.
Okay,
You have
okay, okay.
mercy on
I think
have
you only
mercy on
pity.
someone else, not
Oh, it's
me.
pressing you. Yeah. No, and I think so. The other thing about Azul, like I think you were hitting on it, is I think there is a satisfaction and there is a certain enjoyment that you can derive from Azul, even if you're losing, even if you're playing poorly, as long as you're not just like hell bent or somehow deluded to think that, hey, this is my first time playing Azul, but I'm going to beat this guy that's played 500 games. Uh, as long as you're not that competitive and unrealistic in your expectations, I think you can really enjoy it. And a good barometer for that is actually my brother. So my brother, he doesn't play a bunch of games. I think he plays like Ticket to Ride with his oldest son and maybe a few Monopoly type games. But I taught my brother Azul, and keep in mind when we were kids, we never had video games in the house. My mom wouldn't allow video games in the house, but my dad's house we had a Nintendo and then later a Sega Genesis and that kind of thing, and we would play Madden. And we play other games too, but Madden was really the game we played the most. And usually about a quarter or two into the game, my brother would be the one that's throwing the controller and having a fit and crying and punching me and like could not play the game because if he wasn't winning, he like the world was going to end. And so, granted, we're adults now, but I'm sure there's a certain element of, hey, I want to beat my brother and show him that he may be into board games more than me, but I am still smarter than him, or I can upend his world. And I didn't let that happen, but but he really enjoyed the game and wanted to play a few more times. And of course, we taught his son and everything. So that he really was. I could tell that he was enamored with the actual game itself, and not just with the prospect of trying to beat me at a thing. And for him to enjoy it and want to play more, felt really satisfying to me. Even though I was still able to put the screws to him a little bit, and
Yeah,
enjoy that.
yeah.
Just
Well,
like a
that's
little,
good. That's good. It's good attitude.
yeah,
Not everyone has that attitude.
yeah,
Where they'll be willing to delve deeper and play someone who has a lot of experience in something, because you have to, there's something to be said for playing a game where you're the underdog. It's almost like it's you want it's everyone loves the climb the impossible mountain. And I know maybe it's a little bit of hyperbole there, but at the same time, it's like you go up to a game, it's like, well, you've played this game 500 times, for 450 on BGA, another 50 times live, like I'm going to take you down. And like,
yeah,
it's like a, no, no, nothing to lose type attitude. So,
yeah, yeah.
so
So
there's something to be said for that. And that's
so
fun sometimes.
So I'm involved in, I'll sign up for tournaments and things like that on Board Game Arena, and mostly games that I'm familiar with. And I'm in a group with a bunch of other people that attended World Series of Board Gaming with me over the last couple of years. And I know some of them. There's a whole big group, and what they'll do is every month they set up tournaments on BGA and all the games that are on BGA that are at World Series of Board Gaming, but then they do like 3 wild card games as well. And so the wild card games can be anything that's on BGA. They vote for them or whatever. And so sometimes it's a game that I know, hey, Beyond the Sun, great. I know that game. I feel like I can be competitive in it. And sometimes it's a game I've never heard of or never played before, or I'm very much a novice at. And even some of the World Series of Board Gaming games, like I'm not an expert at Terraforming Mars or Great Western Trail, but I'll be paired with, in a group of these guys that are winning rings in these particular games. And even though I don't feel like those are the games that I get the most excited about for that very reason, like, hey, I want to one see what these guys are doing that's so different from how I approach it as a novice, but it'd be pretty cool if I somehow sneak out a win. And what's amazing is I really enjoy the process of playing like the Terraforming Mars. I played the best game of Terraforming Mars in my life. I'm like, wow, I think I really crushed it. And then all the scoring is hidden in these tournaments. So you don't know there's no leader to beat up on or anything like that unless you can really assess the game state that well, and I can't. And the final scores would come out, and I'm 30 points below the third place guy. I didn't have a prayer, but all throughout the game, I thought I was playing so well that it really made it invigorating for me, and it was enjoyable. And other than the final score being a bit of a letdown, that is a lot of fun to go and try and tackle somebody who's got a 500 elo advantage on you and see if you can knock them down.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, 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 absolutely. I I as far as tournament games, I haven't don't have that experience on BGA, but I kind of accidentally did that a few months ago. I was like, oh, I'll just do one of these Great Western Trail tournaments. I'll play 1 or 2 games and be single elimination. We'll call it a day. Next thing I know, I had signed up for 12 games.
That's
I
right.
was
I
like, oh
remember the day,
boy.
that
I was
day
I
you were
was like,
texting
I was like, wait a minute. This is
me.
so and like that's just not my thing
Yeah,
to
yeah,
have 12 games at once. And the reason
yeah,
why it's not my thing is because I'll do it, right? Like it's not like I'll kind of half-ass it. I'm
yeah,
going to go in and try my best in all 12 of these games.
yeah.
And
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 then the day's
BGA
over.
also does not BGA also like it lends to obsession, right?
Yeah,
Or obsessiveness. Like I'm sitting there, I'm like, well, like I got this many dollars and I could do this and this if this is available. And I start planning this out, and I got 12 of these games I'm looking at, and like this is taking too much time.
yeah,
So, but to make a long story short, like, yeah, it was fun. I was glad after it was over. There was a time when I was almost able to qualify. I thought I did pretty well. I ended up third out of 12 in my little group, and the top 2 go on.
Nice.
And to be honest, I blew it against number two,
Yeah.
with a mistake that I shouldn't have made. Whatever, it's part of the game, part of board
Yeah.
games. But
But you're
at
stewing
the
on
end, I
it
was kind of
still.
like, I'm kind of glad I didn't make the finals. So
Right.
it's like, let's just. It was a nice experience,
It,
and
it is
I
a
will
double-edged
turn it
sword.
over to others to do that.
Yeah.
I'm glad I did it once, and I will read the regulations for these online tournaments if I were
Yeah.
ever
Oh,
to
I
do them
mean,
again.
there are so many different variations in how they set up the tournaments. I think that kind of thing, and they can be very much overkill when you're bombarded with all these game invites as part of like a pool play tournament, and that's exciting. But man, you got to have a lot of spare time and no responsibilities, and it doesn't. You're right. It doesn't work for someone like you and me. I think
Yeah,
that the way the tournaments that I've just been discussing, and most of the tournaments that I would say that I've played in BGA have been you play one game and you either, like if it's single elimination, if you don't get first, you're done. So it doesn't matter how many people are in the tournament, you win in advance or you're out. Or it's you play one game and first place gets 6 points, second place gets 4 points, third place gets 2 points, that kind of a deal. Which still you're only competing in one game at a time. And then if you win, or even if you don't win, but you got third place, you didn't get as many points, but okay, then you play your next round of game, and at least then you can only you can focus on one. The problem that I have is that sometimes I'm in 10 tournaments at a time of totally different games. And so I can't even keep straight like, is this the single elimination Azul game or is this the pool play or this, like, and it gets to be all mashed up. And I do think that there's a certain joy in it makes it very easy to lose sight of what's happening within that particular game unless you write an essay in the notes section, which I just don't do. Uh, and sometimes maybe I might jot a reminder, hey, make sure you pick up this or try and spend your next resources on that thing. But I think it does really erode at the enjoyment of the game and also of the strategy of the game because your mind's trying to keep track of a bunch of different games at once, which I suppose to a certain degree, hats off to those guys that do like the chess tournaments where the chess masters will go around from table to table and just be boom, 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 boom. At least in those games, I suppose with chess, you can assess the board state and there's not hidden information or, objectives that are other than what's laid out by the pieces. But just keeping track of all those different games, what has that player done or not done? What do I want to do or not do? Um, yeah, I'm backing off of BGA a little bit. Um, but it can be very obsessive, as you said.
it can. It also though is frustrating because you invest a lot of time, and then you have to invest even more if you really want to play competitively. I feel like you have to double at least your time on a game than you would if it was present. And I'm not talking about total time because you've you got to see what the other guys drew. Because I think let's take a game like Arc Nova. Great
Mm.
example. Great BGA implementation. I think they do a really good job.
Awesome.
But you
Yep.
can't you it's hard to remember what they're going for. Are they picking cards from the display? You go away and come back and you just don't remember. So
Yeah.
you got to go back and look. Then it's a card that it tells you what it is, but it doesn't tell you the requirements or the specifications that they need,
Mm.
or gives you an idea of what they're looking for. It's like you got to look at that prior the prior moves part of the screen, and then you got to so then it's like, okay, I ain't doing that.
Right.
So if you don't do that, now you have less information than you would if it was live. So then you say to yourself, well, this isn't the real game. Now I'm not playing the game
Yeah.
as it's meant to be played, where you actually can take a look at what other people are doing at the table as part of what you're strategizing to do yourself.
Yeah.
So it's not the same game. And that has been something that has been was challenging for me because I was like, hey, I'm just not into this because I just don't want to be into it. So it was, you know, some games are better than others. Interestingly enough, I think Great Western Trail is much better than others at that because it doesn't it's very easy to see what they're doing. They're not, other players aren't blind or picking from a deck or picking from a shared pool, maybe the objectives, but like that's such a
Yeah.
small part of the game.
Right.
So I think there are certain games that are better than others, but
No doubt.
so many games are so important. It's so important to see what other people are doing. Just Ticket to Ride. We played Ticket to Ride the other day,
Yeah.
and just knowing what color the other players are picking off of the shared a list of trains available.
Yeah.
And like I ain't doing that.
Yeah.
It's like
Me neither.
so like
Yeah.
yeah. So like it's to like whether or not anyone does it, the fact that I'm not doing it is it's like I'm just not playing the same game that I would play if it was live. So, it
And
is what it is.
actually,
It's something to do, but it's when you feel like you feel like you're getting an experience that's less than 100%. So it's disappointing. There's a
yeah.
little bit empty.
No doubt. And actually, I think you raised a couple of good points there. One is that it is not just a lesser than experience, but it's a different experience. And I actually wonder if you build in bad muscle memory as a result. There's no doubt that if you play, 1,000 games of Arc Nova on BGA, you're probably going to get better at Arc Nova. But, and I'll reference back to the World Series of Board Gaming where you're in person and at a table. Uh, there's a lot of data that is easy to access on BGA because they're doing the counting for you, right? They're telling you how much money everybody has. You can see, all the kind of stuff. And when you're sitting at a table, you have to kind of do a little bit more of that manual math in your head, or thinking through things or observing things, and making that transition can be a little bit tricky. I think that you would also mention like how Great Western Trail does a good implementation and it does it better than say an Arc Nova. And I wonder if sometimes it's just a matter of in Great Western Trail, every player board is readily visible just on one page. And in Arc Nova, you got to click the arrow and scan over to somebody else's board and look at their map and look at their sort of things. And I don't know, just like looking back at the colors of the cards that are drawn, it's simple to do that, but it's just I don't want to do that. I'd
No way.
rather
Yeah.
have visually seen it. That's also why I think asynchronous play is just way worse than playing live, mano a mano. Even on BGA, if we're going to play a game, if we can, let's carve out an hour to play. Not even, we would play Arc Nova pretty fast, I'm sure. Let's just carve out some time, play Arc Nova, and be done with it. Because then you can maybe have a little bit of an idea of what was taken off the board. We did just get our free Zoom 10-minute warning. If you had any other notes on that, please do. But I do have a little segment that I want to drop on you for fun.
Yeah, let's do it.
All right. So this is a little bit of two truths and a lie type thing. This may fall incredibly flat, and so we'll see. I have looked through on Board Game Geek, and I've found three very obscure games. At least to me, they're obscure. I never heard of them. Maybe you're familiar with all of these. I found three games, the year they were published, and then the little blurb like the first little blurb that comes up when you're viewing a game on mobile on BGG. Okay. Of these three, so I'll read them. I don't know how I want to implement it right now. I'm gonna read
Right.
the games, the year they're published, and the little blurbs about them.
All right.
And then I'm gonna have you answer a couple questions.
All
Okay.
right.
First game, and I did a little bit of a theme, and you'll catch on to these.
All right.
World Wide Webs in 2001. Mega arachnids race to cover the globe with massive webs to feed their hungry babies before the babies feed on them. Okay.
All right.
Ever heard of that game? Ever played that game?
Was that one game or was that two games?
That World Wide Webs is the name of the game.
Okay.
There, it was published in 2001, and the little blurb, the little description, the little
Okay.
tagline
I
of the
thought the second game was Hungry Arachnids.
no
I
no
thought
no
this was a
no.
spider theme.
This is a spider theme. The blurb is mega arachnids race to cover the globe with massive webs, worldwide webs, I guess, to feed their hungry babies
Okay.
before the babies feed on them. So I'm
Okay.
guessing that you're a massive spider and there's a
Yeah,
map
sure.
or
Okay. All
area
right. Yeah.
control or something like that. You're putting webs out
All
and
right.
you're gathering whatever, you're catching things in your web and feeding your babies. Otherwise, you die because the babies are going to eat you, like
Okay.
I'm sure it happens in nature. Okay.
All right.
Wacky West. This
Okay.
is game number 2. Wacky West in 1991.
Okay.
Tear up rival buildings and vote on the fate of outhouses to rebuild the town.
Okay.
Wacky West.
Okay.
All right. Game number 3. Wicked Witch's Way in 2006. Elude the townsfolk by brewing potions and casting spells to hide your true identity.
All right.
Those are the 3 games. Are you familiar with any of those games?
No.
Okay. Of those 3 games, 2 of them are real. One of them I totally made up.
Okay.
However, of the 2 that are real, one of the descriptions is totally made up.
All right.
There's one game where the real name and the real description are combined. There's one game that's a real game with a fake description. I totally
Okay.
changed. And there's one game that's totally made up, and the description obviously is totally made up too.
All right.
What is what?
All right. I'm going to say that the 2 real games are the witches game is a real game. That is a game.
That is a game. You're familiar with that game?
Nope. But
Okay.
that was you wouldn't have come up with that.
Okay.
Now the spiders or the Wild West.
Yeah.
I mean, the spiders. I'm gonna say, what was the Wild West description?
All right. The Wild West description.
Wild
Tear
West. That was the name of the game.
Wacky West.
Wacky West. Okay.
Wacky West. And World Wide Webs and Wicked Witch's Way.
Wicked Witch's
Tear
Way
up
is
here-
that's a game.
Okay. Wacky West is tear up rival buildings and vote on the fate of outhouses to rebuild the town.
The fate of outhouses. What? Fate of outhouses. All right. Why would you say outhouse? The fate of outhouses? All right. I mean, if you got me on this one, then good for you. But I'm going to say that you did not come up with the fate of outhouses. So I'm going to say Wacky West is a real game and that the spiders are bogus. Am I right?
You nailed it on all counts. So I
Wait.
to work.
So okay. So now I got to figure out which. Damn it.
We're back.
All right, sorry. So, like I was saying,
We have
okay.
less than a minute to go. Not that we couldn't.
So, okay.
edit.
So, okay, I gotta say
Yeah.
that the Wacky West description is wrong. You made that up.
I did not.
Uh,
That is the real.
So you made up the witches one.
I made up the Witches one. The Witches one is actually a Bruno Cathala game, and it's like a witches racing game or something like that. You're on broomsticks, and that sounded really boring to me. So I tried to make it about like hiding that you're a witch kind of thing. But
You know what? Good job, Scott. I like that one.
Thanks.